This next-gen demo is presented by State Farm.
All right, this is Rev3Games at E3 here at the Vivid Touch booth. We are about to talk about a game that isn't just a next-gen game, it's something I have wanted to see personally for quite some time, and we finally had the opportunity at the Sony Press Conference. That is Destiny. I'm so happy to be joined by Staten, the writer and design director for Destiny at Bungie. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks, Adam.
All right, so I have finally borne witness to this game in motion.
Yes.
So there's many things I want to ask, but let's just, how do you describe this game? I mean,
sure.
We saw 7 people playing. Can more people play? Would you use the word massively? There is multiplayer.
Yeah.
How do you define it?
So imagine, if you will, taking a great Bungie shooter and just drawing from other genres elements that make sense. So things like a persistent character, things like public events. And the cool thing about Destiny that's different than other shooters is you'll be going about your thing, playing story content, and all of a sudden out in the big wide world, you'll run into other players that are on their own storylines, their own story paths. And so it's a really big shared world that's filled with players doing all kinds of things that you can just run into, have fun with, and then separate and go back to your own thing. So Bungie games have always been really cooperative, but this just takes that to a whole new level. And of course, it's a great competitive game too.
Now, I want to stop you there. You don't say the word massively multiplayer, and so I mean,
yeah.
I think a lot of people are trying to use that as a reference point. Is that wrong? Is that incorrect?
Well, I think some things make a lot of sense, like a persistent character. If you play an MMO, you usually have a character, a stable of characters you build over time. We have that same idea. You have a character, a stable of characters that you build over time. So that is part of the MMO world. We have private loot stream, so everybody gets their own stuff, so that's familiar to people who play MMOs. But I think for us, MMOs also come with a lot of baggage that doesn't apply to our game.
Right.
Mainly like a subscription model, for example. That's not how you pay for our game.
Which is not going to be happening.
Right, exactly. So some elements make total sense. We draw from MMOs, but some of them don't. So it's a label that it just comes with a lot of baggage for us.
All right. Well, let's ignore the baggage. Let's run some of this tape, and
awesome.
Which is going to trigger a few more questions from you here. So it looks like also, obviously, you're Bungie. There's gunplay in it, but it looks like there's also powers that tend a little bit more towards the magical.
Space magic.
Space magic. Good. You use it. I didn't.
Oh, space magic's awesome. Yeah, I mean, the things you see are all. One of the big characters in our world is this big white sphere called the Traveler. So all the powers you have, all the space magic comes from the Traveler. So unlike in a Halo game where you might have abilities, these are more things that you take on, that you earn over time, that you can grow your skills in. So it really does feel like magic, but it's an awesome kind of magic that feels like you're flinging a piece of the sun at your enemy. It's really visceral, powerful, kinetic magic. Feels really good.
Now, what we're looking at here is a cutscene.
Yep.
I don't even believe these are playable races in the world.
Yep. This guy is one of our combatant races, the Fallen, captain with his crew. This is a cutscene, but it's all rendered out of our engine. This environment you see is actually the environment where you end up playing this particular story mission.
And that's one of the things that stood out to me, because you tend to not have even something that presentational in terms of story in a game that would be an MMO. So I mean, how much of that story is in the game, and how is that versus sort of, I guess, the free roaming aspect of it? Right,
that's a great question. So I mean, Bungie, we love cinematics, we love cinematic storytelling. That's no different in this game. The cool thing about this is, depending on your character, man, woman, different class, you're going to show up as a different character in the cinematics. So basically every story mission is surrounded by a great cinematic story. There are a whole bunch of different activities in the world of Destiny, from more cooperative focus to competitive. All the more story-driven stuff is going to have a great cinematic narrative to go along with it.
Because there's gunplay, I mean, that's always, once again, and forgive me for going back to the MMO, but that is my template, is, it's kind of turn-based, it's, because of the technical limitations, you're doing stuff that is as real-time combat as there could be. What are the challenges to make that happen?
Well, another thing about MMOs is, I mean, you're generally fighting with numbers, right? You're throwing math at your enemy until it dies.
Right.
In Bungie, you're putting bullets on a pixel. I mean, it is an action game.
It's based on the skill of the player.
It is absolutely, based on the skill of the player. You can see in this video here that we've got some indication, which we can't talk too much about there's a number above somene's head.
What could that be?
I don't know. I mean, you are growing and progressing your character over time, but the goal for Destiny is, no matter what your level is, to call it that, it's always going to be challenging for you. It's always going to be fun. So if you love Halo games, if you love first-person shooters, it is going to play like a best-of-class shooter. That's our bread and butter. It's what we love.
And we are looking at you have various races and you have various classes within that, and all of them I assume have certain benefits and certain deficits.
Yep. So your racial choice and your gender choice has no effect on gameplay.
Okay.
So that's just the mask you want to wear. Do you want to be a man or a woman? Do you want to be a more alien type character or a robot? We just want people to choose something that speaks to them on an emotional level. Then when you make your class choice, that does have an impact on gameplay, but not in a really, it doesn't make any hard choices that you'll regret later. It's more about how you customize in small ways to make yourself different. So even at the beginning, your class choice isn't really going to lock you into one play style or another. It's very sort of fine-tuning elements for your class.
And in terms of the grouping, I went up to a presentation, I believe it was back in February of this year, and what was described, and you just talked about it too, is something that almost sounds a little bit like Journey, in terms of people coming into your game in kind of in a very elegant way. That like you're trying to almost get rid of the clear gaminess that we see in a lot of multiplayer games.
Yep, Journey's a great analog, except we have guns and aliens and grenades in our game. But that same sort of feel of being out in a very big world, a beautiful world, running into other people, it's that same feeling of a game that's all of a sudden filled with real people that becomes social in a really wonderful, organic way, and then breaks apart again. Those same sort of temporary collisions you get in Journey, the same things happen in Destiny. People come together for a short period of time. Later on in this movie, you'll see a public event. It's one of those things out in the world that gathers players together for a short time and then lets them separate again. So it is a big world with lots of fun interactions with other players.
And then, I mean, do you try to, party up with your good friends? I mean, how much do you see that happening versus something that might be for people like me who don't want to be as social online, but they're more than happy to play with other people?
One of the pillars of our game is you should absolutely be able to enjoy it solo. You should be able to go into the world by yourself, have a good time. Certainly some activities in the world, you need friends. Sometimes a small group of friends, sometimes a bigger group of friends, but a lot of the activities are just spontaneous. You'll be on a mission out in the world and an opportunity for fun and loot and adventure comes up, and it's a short commitment, and it's just something that teases you off your normal path. Just tempts you to engage with other people for a little while and then get back to what you were doing.
Now, do you...
But it's always a choice.
I assume this is supporting voice chat, like some of those traditional elements are in this.
Yeah.
The one thing I was also noting in this is the animations, or what I'm thinking is like the AI seems to be a little bit more what you would expect, say, from a Bungie shooter than from sort of what feels more procedural or expected out of a lot of MMOs.
That's absolutely right. I mean, we are still doing everything we love. We have great AI simulation, we have great physics. These enemies are going to be tough, they will challenge you, but in a sandbox way. I mean, this is still a sandbox shooter. Clearly we're at E3, so some things are a little bit more presentational and staged, but to show off features. But, I mean, these guys are rough. I mean, not a big surprise. I was playing this deathless. I mean, I would have been reamed by that guy a few seconds ago. So
are the characters we're seeing below what would actually, you would want to fight some of these enemies?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no one wanted to die on the Sony stage, so at least player one.
Okay, so it looks like weapons themselves are also upgradable. Is that the right way to read this menu?
Absolutely. So you can see that everybody, I mentioned this before, has their own private loot stream, so no fighting over loot. This weapon is totally upgradable. You see a cool talent tree. It gets more powerful over time. It's really fun. I mean, you have a chance to grow with a weapon. We talked about them being sort of like swords for a knight, a named sword that has its own legend and its own powers, and this is one of them, Thunderlord. It's an awesome epic weapon.
I mean, it sounds like that you guys are keenly aware of kind of that need for self-identity. That, by the stuff that you acquire and you upgrade, that you really do sort of, if not personalize your experience, you bling yourself out enough that you can sort of say, hey, I'm special.
Absolutely. So the hunter who's in front of me, you can see that they have this cool monocle that's a choice they made. They have a cool cape with an epic pattern on it that they earned in one of the activities. So really, we have a huge amount of customization, and you could sort of see a tease of it in that UI screen. Every piece of gear that you pick up has gameplay properties. So it'll give you, we're not going to talk too much about it at E3, but the choices you're making aren't just cosmetic. They are to a certain extent, but they help with gameplay too.
I have to say, I think one of the reasons I haven't seen stuff like this in games that this many people playing is because of the balancing. I mean, how are you guys handling that? You can put in all these elements and you can ensure that it doesn't just sort of upend the entire ecosystem of the game.
Well, I can't talk too much about it, but like a lot of things in our game, it's just choice. I mean, in Destiny, you really choose your challenge. You choose the kind of people you want to play with. And without getting in too deep into it, that solves a lot of the problem.
I think one of the key things I'm trying to get my head wrapped around, because you look at this, I know, look, just visually, you can know how much work has gone into it.
Yeah.
And then I'm wondering, how much content is in this game? I mean, I think I'm having to recalibrate sort of.
Well, this is a great example. I mean, here we are beyond the wall in old Russia. We have just cracked the surface of this particular destination in the game. I mean, beyond, you see the old colony ships out there. There is a whole big world just in this one area of Destiny. There's a lot more places to explore just in here. I mean, it's mind-boggling how big this is. I mean, we're a bigger team now than we ever had for Halo, but we have better tools. We're able to create worlds much more quickly, but it is a big world. That's by far one of our biggest challenges is how to fill out this tremendous world that we've made.
And I mean, I'm definitely under the impression that what we start with Destiny, that it grows over
absolutely.
time. That it is, as you said, it's persistent.
Yep.
I mean, what is, if you can, give us a sense of what the long-term goal is in terms of how this expands.
I think you summed it up in terms of persistence. I mean, we can't talk about it too much, but if we're going to let you grow your character over time, if we're going to let you explore this world over time, it would be horrible for us to take away your character or take away parts of the world. I mean, it is a world that's always going to get bigger, and even a world that sends you back to places that are familiar, but for whole different fun reasons. I mean, this public event, for example, you see the level 20s come in. Those guys were off doing something else in old Russia, but they were lured here by the public event just to get something from their own private loot stream or an achievement.
Now, those players, were they always on the server? Could you have always run into them, or something more, I guess, did they sort of stream into your game and that they'll be leaving at some point in the future?
So this area is a public area. You know, when we were in the wall, that was a private area, so we couldn't have joined up with people who weren't in our fire team. But out here, it's a big public space. People can stream in. We have matchmaking, code working, so it's going to send you in with people. That makes sense? Yeah. But yeah, this is one of the areas in the game, and this doesn't happen everywhere, but old Russia is filled with pockets of public events or public places like this.
But that barrier from the private to the public is not something that you're making apparent to the player. That's what I'm sort of gathering.
So what will happen is, it wasn't in that video, but when you enter a public space, the HUD will message to you, hey, you're in a public area. Now, you've left private and you've gone public. When you leave that space, it'll message, hey, you're back in a private space. So you'll always be aware of where those opportunities are. And if you're the kind of person that wants to avoid stuff like that, well, you'll know. Like, this is one of those places where it happens. If you crave that kind of interaction, well, you'll know that too.
I have to say, I am old enough that I remember when that Halo game was even going to be on the Mac at one point, and there's all these different ideas you had for it. Some of those original ideas were so ridiculously ambitious. I'm getting the sense that you're finally able to realize them now, and that's what Destiny is.
There are a lot of those old ideas. I think we had a huge passion for co-op. I mean, back in the day, co-op wasn't that big of a thing, and we loved it. I mean, we wanted to make a big world where you could spend time with your friends and that it was meaningful, and I think we've gotten closer than we've ever been with this.
Obviously, we do not have a set release date, but it was shown at the Sony Press Conference. It will also be available Xbox One and Xbox 360.
Absolutely, yep.
You guys did hint at a more unique relationship with Sony. Is that just exclusive content? How are we to read that?
Well, I mean, I can't talk too much about it right now, but yeah, I mean, we're super happy to be working with Sony. I mean, we've been on Xbox for so long. I mean, we love Xbox, but yeah, we don't have any details right now, but we'll talk about it later.
Yes, I have a feeling
the other guy's giving me the evil eye over there. What's going on? It's Adam, come on.
I think very little was conveyed right there.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well done, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. I cannot wait to see more of this game. I finally have some closure in my life. I finally been witness to Destiny in action.
Cool. Thank you very
so
much.
Talk to you soon.